That said, our primary purpose is to entertain, and where we can entertain responsibly, obviously we try to do that. We try to have a positive impact on the world, but the first thing we need to do is entertain.
There was an in-depth piece, like a behind-the-scenes piece, talking about how they've been in a full meltdown about this girl for a couple of years now.
AMC's surprising announcement that it would pull the live-action Snow White adaptation from every theater sent shockwaves throughout the industry. Disney had once envisioned a triumphant run, buoyed by the legendary charm of the original tale and the star power behind the new project. Yet in a move that left both analysts and passionate fans utterly stunned, AMC revealed that plummeting ticket sales had forced their hand. Continuing to show the film had become nothing short of a losing gamble.
Yeah, I have a clip of it.
Oh, okay, great.
Her being a retard.
Okay.
It's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White.
That laugh.
That is
not going to be saved by
You
the
wrote
prince.
it?
She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can.
Plenty of empty seats in theaters, seats that could have been filled with more profitable blockbusters, set the stage for a dramatic downturn that had been brewing for weeks, though no one ever predicted it would end up like this. Even Disney, with its immense resources and its unmatched, legendary marketing machine, found itself powerless to rescue this adaptation from the barrage of controversies that clung to it at every turn. The on-air meltdown, the swirling behind-the-scenes rumors, and the disarray among cast members all played their part, fueling a fan backlash that only grew louder and even more relentless with each passing day.
It just takes a beloved movie and makes it much more boring and much less realistic. The movie is really, really bad.
Disney's promotional campaign had promised a fresh and exciting take on a legendary story, headlined by rising star Rachel Zegler and seasoned celebrity Gallardo. Yet, almost every conceivable misstep occurred, leading to AMC's truly unprecedented decision to cut the film's theatrical run short, well before it could build any last-minute momentum. In response, industry insiders and commentators scrambled to uncover the root cause behind this spectacular debacle.
Our rights are on the line, folks.
Bitch! The
Our
right to buy
reproductive
Cosby
rights.
sweaters?
Come on.
That's the face
Go
of a
vote blue.
serial killer.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button.
Some speculated that fans had become tired of Disney's constant efforts to modernize its classic catalog, while others pointed to the meltdown surrounding Rachel Zegler and her bold public statements, paired with a corporate PR strategy that came off as strained and insincere. This combination sparked a catastrophic drop in attendance. No matter the exact reasons, the outcome was clear. The film's dismal box office performance, fueled by a tidal wave of negative publicity, made it impossible for AMC to justify keeping it on the screens. The dramatic fall of what once looked like a promising movie turned into a cautionary tale for studios everywhere. Even Joe Rogan dove into the fiasco on his popular podcast, meticulously breaking down every twist and turn of the debacle.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There's a big focus on her love story. With a guy who literally stalks her.
Say it louder so your other eye can hear you.
So we didn't do that this time.
He emphasized that AMC's decision to pull the film wasn't just about dismal numbers. It marked a cultural turning point. It showed audiences that even Disney's trademark advantages, unwavering brand loyalty, powerhouse marketing, and dazzling star-studded casts aren't always enough to secure a hit. The overwhelming meltdown had eclipsed every other aspect of the movie. On his podcast, Rogan methodically retraced the series of events that led to this dramatic downfall, providing a captivating breakdown of the debacle.
Well, the primary suffering is being sent in by my company to watch a children's movie as a single man, like 2 p.m. on a Thursday. That was the first part that was a little bit weird, but I was basically the only person in the theater.
The controversy unfolded through a series of events, from Rachel Zegler's refreshingly candid interviews to her unanticipated comments on The View, and even her social media posts that veered sharply away from Disney's carefully curated message. What started as a controlled piece of press promotion quickly escalated into a live spectacle for a studio audience, transforming the situation into a major headline grabber. According to Rogan, this meltdown would have been damaging on its own. But when it was combined with significant changes to the beloved story, the impact was even more catastrophic.
You don't particularly see people who, look like me or are me playing roles like that. So it was definitely, when it got announced,
He wasn't a stalker, by the way.
thing that was like trending on Twitter for days because all of the people were angry.
It set off a perfect storm of negative backlash. What began as a seemingly innocent choice, Rachel Zegler, who was viewed as the ideal pick for the new lead, thanks to her vocal talent, modern vibe, and her potential to appeal to younger audiences while connecting with longtime fans, quickly took a dramatic turn. As more details about the adaptation surfaced, fans were shocked to discover that major story elements, essential themes, and key character arcs had been significantly altered or removed entirely.
And so it was like
those people.
very much this, yes. It was this
people that
awakening
we need
of-
to educate, the people that we need to love into awareness.
love them in the right direction.
The move away from a faithful retelling in favor of a reimagined narrative sparked a surge of skepticism. People began to wonder if Disney's bold effort to update the classic had ultimately gone too far, sacrificing the original's deep emotional essence. Amid the growing tension, Rachel Zegler's public persona only served to intensify the controversy. She was occasionally perceived as speaking dismissively about the cherished elements of the story. At least, that was how many fans interpreted her remarks.
We need to no, you don't. It's not your job. Your job is to entertain. You are paid to entertain.
She regarded the original version as outdated, a relic from a bygone era that no longer deserved reverence. Furious responses began pouring in on social media. Instead of being viewed as a fresh face poised to revitalize a timeless tale, Zegler was quickly labeled as the embodiment of all that had gone wrong with the adaptation. To its credit, Disney attempted to manage the fallout by organizing a series of talk show appearances to address the growing storm.
Very few people wanted to see this. Even the little kids who like Disney movies, even they don't seem to be turning up in droves for the movie because the movie is really, really bad.
The initial plan was to revive the film's reputation before it hit theaters, making sure that the wave of negativity wouldn't overshadow its opening weekend. However, Rachel Zegler's fiercely independent approach clashed head-on with Disney's strict top-down attempts to keep her in check on social media. Instead of following the corporate script, she boldly shared her own viewpoints, at times proudly declaring that she wouldn't compromise her values for any corporate narrative. In a different setting, such a stance might have garnered admiration, but given the sensitivity of the project and the audience's deep-seated protectiveness over the original story, it only added fuel to an already blazing controversy.
And so I've got some bona fides here on being fair. The movie was absolutely terrible.
It only ramped up the drama. Critics said her words often came off as patronizing toward fans of the classic film, while defenders argued she was just pushing for a modern take that embraced representation and inclusivity. In any case, the showdown between an outspoken star and a global powerhouse quickly became the headline act, pushing any talk of the movie's artistic qualities into the background.
In every way that the movie differed from the beloved 1937 original, it was worse.
As the buzz about looming box office challenges grew louder, industry insiders began to whisper that Disney's leadership was growing increasingly uneasy. Bob Iger, freshly reinstated to a top role and once known for his savvy in navigating corporate dramas, now faced a crisis management approach that seemed all over the place. Instead of offering a clear, unified message, fans were met with conflicting statements from the cast and swirling rumors of behind-the-scenes turmoil.
It basically, this movie was like you took the original Snow White and just put everything through this filter of liberalism. It wasn't through a filter of Japanese anime, it was through a filter of liberalism.
And there was a growing feeling that no one fully grasped just how big the problem had become. The meltdown on The View was the clearest sign of this chaos. Disney's PR team had carefully chosen the show, a familiar daytime spot known for sparking mainstream conversations, as the ideal stage. The plan was for Rachel Zegler to open up about her experiences, tackle fan concerns head-on, and show that even though the adaptation was modernized, it still paid tribute to the timeless spirit of the original. However, as tensions began to mount behind the scenes, it became clear that the situation was far more turbulent than anyone had anticipated.
So from the casting to the class politics, the sexual politics, the regime politics, everything about it was liberal.
Reports indicated that the View's staff had received direct instructions from Disney detailing the talking points, what to highlight and what to steer clear of, for Rachel Zegler during her appearance. But as soon as the segment started, it was clear that Rachel was on a different wavelength. She was eager to delve into political topics that had nothing to do with the film, and she wasn't inclined to stick to the sanitized script Disney had set up for her. Under pressure, the show's producers scrambled in an attempt to guide her back on track.
Snow White is generally understood to be a very, very white person. And in this case, they decided, no, that doesn't make any sense. So I don't think we're allowed to say that, right? I was referring to the movie as sand beige.
But the tension was unmistakable during the live broadcast. Rachel made statements that critics later labeled incendiary, suggesting that the timeless core of the original story was now outdated and that fans clinging to nostalgia needed to welcome change. For those who were already on the fence about the adaptation, her words came off as a personal affront, sparking a surge of anger that quickly exploded across social media. Within moments, the real meltdown unfolded. Eyewitnesses described frantic movements off camera as producers frantically attempted to cut her off or steer the conversation back on course. Unyielding, Rachel doubled down on her controversial remarks. The segment rapidly spiraled out of control, so much so that the hosts of the show, including Whoopi Goldberg, Joy Behar, and Sunny Hostin, were left scrambling to fill the chaotic airtime. In the midst of the chaos, security personnel or staff members from the show escorted her off the set, and the camera abruptly cut to a commercial break. Although the full meltdown was never completely broadcast, partial clips and secondhand reports quickly went viral, igniting a media firestorm. Memes, jokes, and a torrent of outrage spread online, ensuring that every future discussion about the film would inevitably circle back to that chaotic live appearance. In his podcast commentary, Joe Rogan described the incident as a PR disaster, a moment where Disney not only lost control of the narrative, but did so in the most public way imaginable, live to a massive audience. Although immediate damage control measures were enacted, the meltdown had taken on a life of its own.
It's no really knock on her. If you did the autobiography of Malcolm X, would you cast Tom Hanks? If you remade Moana, would you cast a little Irish guy? No, you wouldn't. So that was off the top.
The fiasco became a rallying point for those who argued that the new Snow White disrespected the classic. Critics of Rachel Zegler claimed her meltdown proved she was too headstrong for a project that required some adherence to corporate strategy. On the other side, her supporters insisted she had every right to voice her opinions. The incident sparked commentary from all corners of the media, casting a long shadow over the rest of the cast, including Gallardo. Cast in a high-profile role, many had hoped Gallardo's presence would bring a balancing effect with her star power and established credibility. However, as the meltdown narrative dominated discussions, her contributions faded into the background. Joe Rogan noted rumors hinting at friction between the two, with unverified reports that Rachel privately criticized Gallardo's background or political views, further reinforcing the perception that the entire production was steeped in conflict and undermining any hope for a united front. Choosing to distance herself from the drama, Gallardo offered only vague statements of excitement for the film. Some believed that by staying neutral, she was trying to safeguard her own brand. Ultimately, the original upbeat promotional synergy Disney had planned was replaced by a swirling vortex of speculation, pitting opinions on whether one agreed or disagreed with the lead star.
It is not racist to suggest that a character who is described in the original as skin white as snow, that is literally how the character is described in the original, that's a character description in the same way that, as you mentioned, in Moana.
Fan response was brutal. Social media erupted with hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite as fans voiced their outrage. Many felt deeply betrayed that the adaptation had strayed so far from the classic elements they held dear, while others were angered by Zegler's seemingly dismissive attitude toward the cherished Disney traditions of old. The opening weekend box office numbers mirrored this negative vibe. Despite Disney unleashing massive resources into promoting the film, it still fell short of even the most modest box office predictions. Theater chains such as AMC, which had set aside prime screens hoping for a blockbuster hit, were left showing the movie to half-empty auditoriums. Parents began directing their children to alternative releases, either because they thought the new adaptation was too controversial or because the relentless bad press had already soured their interest. As it became undeniably clear that sales were plummeting, AMC found itself facing a difficult decision. Typically, a major Disney release guarantees a steady window in theaters, benefiting both the studio and exhibitors, but with plummeting ticket sales, AMC realized that switching screens to more reliable films made more financial sense. In the end, the film had become toxic, overshadowed by scandal, and even the allure of a big-budget spectacle couldn't overcome an audience worn out by controversy.
This bizarre fixation with race shifting everything, but only in one direction by Disney, obviously is quite strange.
In a move that seasoned industry insiders described as completely unprecedented for a major Disney project, AMC pulled the film from its theaters entirely. While the exact timing of this decision varied by region, it didn't take long before AMC's official channels confirmed that they were shutting the film down when asked for comment. AMC executives explained that the movie's lackluster performance no longer justified dedicating valuable screens to it. Behind the scenes, local theater managers reported daily struggles with nearly empty auditoriums. Customers would casually walk past the Snow White posters without a second glance or openly remark on how unappealing the film looked. As the fallout from the Meltdown spread, the negative press became so overwhelming that AMC saw no other choice but to withdraw the movie. Some critics even speculated that this debacle had strained AMC's relationship with Disney, although others suggested that Disney might have secretly approved of the decision. After all, if the film wasn't generating revenue, continuing to show it would only exacerbate the humiliation. It was seen as better to quietly cut losses and make room for the next big release. Joe Rogan noted that this moment was nothing short of a watershed. It wasn't merely about AMC's scheduling preferences, it signified that the entire system, where Disney and major exhibitors operate hand in hand, was at risk of unraveling when a film becomes too controversial. Even high-budget prestige projects are not immune if they fail to meet audience expectations. Rogan recalled how the meltdown on The View had been the turning point. Before that incident, there was still hope among some insiders that the adaptation might captivate curiosity seekers or appeal to families not deeply enmeshed in the controversy. But once the explosive footage and rampant rumors started circulating, any mild interest swiftly morphed into outright disinterest or even hostility. The Meltdown stripped away all semblances of normalcy, exposing a production teetering on the brink of chaos. Moreover, it evolved into a cautionary tale about the risks of handling live interviews. Studios normally orchestrate meticulously controlled publicity tours to ensure a consistent message and that their stars remain locked into prepared talking points. However, the unscripted, unpredictable setting of The View revealed just how fragile these efforts can be when a star like Rachel Zegler decides to speak her mind. Despite the producer's desperate attempts to rein her in, the ensuing meltdown was unstoppable and reverberated throughout every corner of the entertainment world. Disney's clumsy damage control efforts only amplified the situation, making it seem that the studio was more interested in silencing dissent than embracing honest dialogue. This spectacle had an unexpected effect. Fans who had been casually following the story suddenly became riveted, if only to watch the entire debacle unfold live. Meanwhile, Bob Iger's return to Disney during this tumultuous period drew additional scrutiny. Inheriting a slate of remakes in various stages of production, Iger had once banked on the idea that simply attaching the Disney name to a recognizable title would ensure family audiences. However, the Snow White fiasco starkly revealed the limits of that strategy. When negative buzz spirals out of control, no matter how legendary or beloved the original material is, audiences have every right to turn away. Detractors seized on the Meltdown as further evidence that Disney had grown complacent, believing it could reimagine a classic without honoring the very elements that made it special. The incident also exposed a troubling breakdown in the synergy that usually exists among Disney's corporate offices, marketing teams, and its stars. A synergy that had long been a cornerstone of the company's success. Instead of showcasing a well-orchestrated narrative, the public was treated to clear signs of confusion and internal discord. Adding to the chaos, not only fans, but even individuals within Disney's larger network began to speak out against Rachel Zegler. A telling anecdote soon emerged about a producer's son who posted scathing, disparaging comments on social media, suggesting that Zegler's outspoken nature was irresponsible and actively damaging to the production. Whether this was a coordinated effort or just raw emotion is unclear, but it only deepened the impression that the studio's inner workings were fragmented and out of sync. Naturally, Rachel Zegler took such remarks personally, seeing them as further proof that she was being unfairly scapegoated. Some of her supporters echoed that sentiment, arguing that the adaptation itself was so deeply flawed that even if she had adhered strictly to the script, loyal fans would still have been alienated. At that point, AMC decided to cut its losses, leading to the now infamous decision to pull Snow White from theaters completely. The symbolic impact was enormous. Disney's live-action remakes have historically enjoyed extended theatrical runs, often spanning weeks or even longer depending on ticket sales. For one of these films to vanish from screens so abruptly was virtually unheard of, and it sent a clear message throughout Hollywood. Even the biggest studios can suffer dramatically when controversies completely overshadow the film itself. The meltdown was so severe that, at least in the eyes of the paying public, the movie became unwatchable. Commentators debated whether other theater chains would follow suit. While some smaller chains had already quietly dropped the film due to dismal attendance, AMC's decision made it official. America's largest exhibitor was officially done with Snow White. Joe Rogan emphasized that in another era, Disney might have quietly weathered a flop by leaning on home video releases or international markets to recoup some costs. But in today's fast-paced world of social media outrage and 24/7 news coverage, the Meltdown dominated every single conversation about the film. Even casual moviegoers, who usually pay little attention to Hollywood gossip, became aware of the fiasco. They no longer associated the film with magical storytelling or enchanting visuals. Instead, they saw it as a case study in corporate mishandling and an awkward on-air confrontation. The Meltdown proved to be the final blow, the point where even those critics who might have previously defended certain aspects of the adaptation lost all interest in supporting it. The incident also sparked a broader discussion about the nature of box office poison, a term that began cropping up in conversations about Rachel Zegler's future in the industry. Some industry observers argued that it was unfair to place all the blame on her, suggesting that the adaptation had simply strayed too far from the original, thereby alienating devoted fans. Others highlighted that the film's marketing had been haphazard at best, failing miserably to articulate a clear vision. Ultimately, the Meltdown on The View became so integral to the narrative of the film's failure that it could never be separated from the overall debacle. Posters and trailers continued to emphasize Rachel Zegler's star power, but when she stepped into the spotlight to promote the movie, the conversation veered into baffling and infuriating territory for the very audience Disney had hoped to attract. Joe Rogan speculated that this fiasco would force Disney to adopt stricter guidelines for future live-action projects, perhaps requiring any major star to sign on to far more restrictive clauses regarding their press appearances. Alternatively, the studio might finally learn how to balance creative freedom with preserving brand integrity, making sure that any reimagining of a classic never strays so far as to alienate its core fans. However, Rogan also warned that overcorrecting could backfire. If future stars appeared overly robotic, reciting cookie-cutter safe platitudes, audiences might pick up on the inauthenticity, sparking another kind of backlash. Ironically, the Meltdown revealed that sincerity, or even the mere appearance of it, can be a double-edged sword in the public eye. While Rachel Zegler's passionate outburst was undoubtedly genuine, it wasn't exactly what the audience wanted to hear immediately afterward. As speculation mounted about the film's future streaming strategy, given that Disney traditionally prioritizes theatrical runs, rumors emerged that the studio might hastily move the adaptation to its streaming service, effectively cutting their losses. Yet even this option carried risks, as dumping a high-profile title onto a streaming platform too soon could reinforce the perception that the film was an utter failure. With AMC and other theaters dropping the adaptation left with few options, Rogan predicted that the legacy of The Meltdown would continue to haunt both Disney and Rachel Zegler in the short term. Future roles for Zegler might be heavily scrutinized for any hint that she could repeat such outspoken behavior on live TV, while Disney itself would face tough questions about its approach to reimagining beloved classics. In the end, The Meltdown not only turned into a cautionary tale about live interview mishaps, but also reshaped how studios handle their stars, messaging, and treasured properties moving forward. It stood as proof that if controversies cloud a film, no amount of magic, even backed by a legendary brand like Disney, can save it. What was meant to be a modern reimagining instead became synonymous with corporate missteps and on-air chaos. It was a moment when negative buzz overpowered the potential for genuine engagement, a moment that shifted the entire narrative from one of promising creativity to one of spectacular failure.